Welcome to our broadcast, Managing the Edge, Monetize Power Services for Success with Schneider Electric, brought to you by Schneider Electric. I'm your host, Kenneth Johnson from the Channel Company. The explosive growth of edge computing is driving the demand for lifecycle management of edge sites, especially since many have little to no on-site IT staff to support them. Today, we'll learn how you can take advantage of this opportunity and expand your portfolio with Schneider Electric. Joining me today to discuss this further is Larry Hahn from Schneider Electric. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
Let's start with segment one. Why manage power? How has the way we create and consume data changed?
Kind of think about what's been going on from a macro perspective in our industry. You're starting to see more and more technology being moved closer to us as consumers. I don't think you can gotta go anywhere today without having some type of app associated with a good or a service that we're buying. I hear a lot of buzz around generative AI, ChatGPT. Basically, our expectations as consumers is changing. We want instant gratification, and we really kind of demand access to data almost immediately. And it should get to the point where data is now becoming kind of the new currency for us. And the thing is that's only going to accelerate as we move forward. Depending on what agency you look at, we typically quote Gartner, but they say that by 2025, 75% of all data is going to be created outside of the data center. So our mindset around data and how we get access is really, it's evolving as this technology gets closer to us as consumers.
With that in mind, why is it important for organizations to have the right support system in place to help manage their edge deployments?
If you really think about it, that first of all, they change the expectations of consumers. But the other thing is as that technology is going into those locations, there's a couple key things that really come into play. The first is, but those locations weren't really designed for IT. They're being manned by people that are not technologists. You know, I like to use the example of like a Starbucks. If you go into Starbucks, they have, you can order your coffee or muffin or whatever it is you want on your app. You go in, it's available. In order for that to work, that app has to tie into a POS system, has to tie into the supply chain. And really, again, our expectation is that's going to be available. But the reality is the people in that Starbucks, the POS system went down or the wireless connection to the store, if that went down, they're not going to be able to fix that. So as you see more of the technology getting into those type of environments, that's a challenge. The other aspect that you see is that the people or the resources these companies have to support those environments is actually being strained. They have fewer people. So there's more technology, just this demand for it to be available at data center, availability, and there's fewer people to do it. So really what it gets down to, if you look at these companies and they're kind of looking at their distributed environment, the things they have to ask themselves is if they have IT that is required or dependent upon power, in other words, it plugs into the wall, and it's either supporting revenue generation or the experience that customer is having, or even business continuity, they need to really think about having a comprehensive D2 strategy, which really encompasses a UPS, which a lot of them usually have, but then also that monitoring and D2 support in place. That's the driver that they need to think about. And I guess the last part of that is, because it's accelerating so fast, they really need to actually look at how they can meet that demand. A lot of these companies are actually looking to outsource things that are non-traditional or non-core for their business. And really power is one of those things that would be there. So it actually opens opportunity for partners to actually fill the void and actually help their customers to meet the demand so they can provide that experience to their customers.
That brings us to segment two, value for your business and customers. How do you help partners have better visibility to anticipate vulnerabilities for their customers?
So that's actually where our offers start coming in place. So what we typically communicate to our partners is, first of all, they need to understand what the drivers are. But reality is our job is, once we identify those, is to enable them to say yes. So that when their customers ask them to help them, and the way we actually do that is through our EcoStruxure IT Expert cloud-based monitoring software. So it's a multi-tenant view, vendor agnostic. And what it does is actually give them visibility into the assets in the customer's environment. So we could do a assessment of that environment. We could pull in the assets that are connected. And then what we do is actually give them visibility into the health of those assets. So we'll actually tell them how healthy the UPS is. Like, should we have a battery wear model so we can actually anticipate when it fails? We'll look at device security. We'll actually even pull in the entitlements those assets might have. And what that does is it actually gives the partner a foundation of what that customer looks like. And then from there, they can actually go and provide recommendations on what to do next.
How do you enhance the customer experience and drive profitability?
Now that we've had that baseline as far as where the customer's environment is, then we can actually start getting into things that will actually drive that value to the customer. And there's a couple of different ways we do that. The first is by understanding what's going on today, we can actually start to pinpoint areas where the customer might be overspending on their support strategy. And that could be basically responding to downtime issues. So they're reacting instead of being proactive. So now that we know what's going on, we can actually start to anticipate downtime. And by doing that, we can, one, fix things that need to be fixed immediately. But the other thing is we can start to plan for when we actually do upgrades or support. Again, we might know when a battery is going to fail. So we might have someone that's already on site. We can ship a battery there to replace it. So now instead of doing 2 truck rolls, we do 1. So now we start to standardize the costs that these customers are spending to maintain their environment. That's the first thing. The other thing is that we also, through that visibility, we can actually maybe change some of the mindset of how customers manage their back-end process. So we have some customers talk to you that say, every 3 years, I replace my batteries. Doesn't matter what's going on, I replace them. Well, now, because we actually have visibility into the health of the battery, that battery might actually have another year of life. So instead of replacing year 3, we could stretch it to year 4. So the budget that was going to be used to replace those batteries now could be allocated to other stuff that might actually drive value into their customer base. And then the other thing that we could do is through our tool, we give our partners the ability to control or manage the environment on behalf of their customers. And that's stuff like they can manage alarms, they can set thresholds, they can actually do firmware upgrades, they can actually recycle the power if it needs to be. So now the customer can outsource that, and the resources that we're doing that for them can now be reallocated to things that might actually, again, drive more value, which then leads to more profitability for them.
How do your solutions help customers reduce their carbon footprint and increase sustainability?
There's a number of things we're doing. I'll talk about what we're doing immediately and then where we're going. So things that specifically we can do today. So we have documents which actually show the amount of carbon that went into making our units, and then also the use and then recycling. So one of the things we could do is we could take that information and say it's a manual process, but we can actually help a customer understand what their actually embodied carbon or their carbon footprint is in their environment. Some other things that we can do just through our software is having visibility into maybe how much load is on the UPSs. We can actually work with them to right size the loads on those UPSs. So typically the way UPSs work, the more load on them, the more efficient they are. What's that mean is they're using less energy. So by doing that, less energy means less carbon created. So now we're reducing carbon. The other thing that we can do is through modernization, we can actually help the customer understand the older technology has a bigger carbon footprint. If they actually put a newer model in, they'll have a lower carbon footprint so they can lower their footprint that way. So these are things we can do right now. And then on the back end, we have a recycling and reuse program where we'll actually take those units back, we'll recycle responsibly or reuse, and then we'll provide that information to the customer. So if they already have ESG goals or carbon reduction goals, they can show how they're actually doing it. That's today. As we move forward, we're actually looking to digitize that whole process. So those documents that provide information on the carbon into the units, we're actually going to bring that into our IT expert software. And then also we have some trade-off tools, which actually show scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. We're actually going to digitize that process as well. And then the last thing that we're doing, and this is actually in market today, where we just introduced it, we have a SaaS program which will enable customers to put in some of their energy bills and answer a few questions. And based off of that, they can actually set an ESG strategy. So that could be, I want to be carbon neutral by 2030. I want to reduce my carbon footprint by 50%. And then it'll basically show them where they are, how they're doing with that, and actually provide them with resources to actually go and start putting those plans in place. So these are things that we're doing to help customers address the carbon footprint and meet their carbon goals.
Thank you for sharing that. That's something that's important to many partners. Something else that's also important to partners is how do you help your partners grow their business through your customizable portfolio of services?
We're not going to dictate how they should actually implement our solutions into their business model. We typically talk about two things. We ask them, how do they want to monitor that environment for the customer and how they want to service. And there's actually 4 different options between those two that as far as how they could move forward. And basically, depending on how they answer the question, then we actually have a path for them to follow to actually implement those solutions. And that could be all the way from them doing everything themselves to outsourcing everything to Schneider Electric or something in between. The other thing about that is that each customer is different. Some environments might require them to do it, or it might even have a customer that has a footprint outside of their service area. We can actually augment where they don't have coverage to enable them to provide that solution. So basically, what we position to them is that they can kind of pick and choose what they need from our list of software and services and really design it based off of, one, the level of investment they want to make today or their investment plan over time, and also their level of maturity with regards to their monitoring and their service. So because of that, partners have typically been very appreciative of the fact that they can kind of step in as they need to. They can try it out, or they can build into a book of business as they build it.
That brings us to segment 3, enabling the partner. What type of digital tools and software do you offer partners?
First of all, our IT expert software is a tool that they can use. We actually have built-in assessments that they can leverage on the front end. If you think about the full lifecycle of a customer, depending on the customer, they're going to have equipment that's going to be at different parts of that lifecycle. One piece of that is that assessment, giving them visibility to what's in their environment and helping identify basically what to do next. That is a tool. But we also have some other trade-off tools. We have a tool that we use a lot with our partners, which is our UPS Edge Fleet Management tool. And basically what this does is it helps the partners to show the customer by their inputs. So they put in the cost of their people and the amount of time they spend servicing the environment, what their cost of downtime is, what the assets they have in the environment. We basically show them this is what it costs you to do it yourself, and this is what it would cost you if you outsource it. So we use that tool as a way to, one, show the benefit of outsourcing, but also to help the customers to build the budget to go justify the investment into an outsourced solution. So that's one tool we use. Another tool we have is a UPS efficiency trade-off tool, which actually will show the customer, depending on what models they choose, what their electrical bill will actually be. And that's also another thing we use to show profitability or help to justify a budget. Now, another tool that we're working on, which is going to be a combination of those two I mentioned, but then also bring in a tool we have actually on the data center side, which is more focused on sustainability, which shows scope 2 and scope 3. And then also a tool we have comparing our lithium ion batteries with our VRLA batteries. It's going to be a single phase monetization tool. This will basically pull all that data sets together. And then at the end, we'll actually show not only the cost difference, but also we'll bring in sustainability and carbon footprints. So they can see both. So they can be able to toggle back and forth between cost savings and carbon footprint savings.
How do you increase profitability through your partner-led services?
There's a couple of things that we do from a profitability standpoint. First of all, on the partner-led services side, one of our philosophies as we move forward is that all of our single-phase UPSs, these are the UPSs that could plug into the wall, will actually be serviced by our channel, not by a Schneider Electric badge field service technician. So that actually opens up a couple opportunities for partners. The first is that they've already made investment in resources that are already on site in their customers, probably managing networking switches or server storage, whatever it might be. Now they can actually expand the reach of those resources and actually do service on our UPSs. So that's one revenue source. In that scenario, they could sell our contract on the front end, and then we would actually dispatch them and pay them to do service work on the back end. The other opportunity is for those service contracts we've sold that don't have a service person or service partner associated with it, we can actually open that up to them and actually leverage their resources to go do that service work. So that'd be net new projects for them. And then the third thing is that we, in the future state, will enable them to have a cloud marketplace that they can actually put jobs into. So from a partner-led services model, it's going to enable them to expand their reach, get access to additional jobs, and then also to even get their brand out there in regards to other stuff that they can do outside of just supporting Schneider Electric. That's the one thing. Then other aspect of profitability is within our partner program, we actually have a lifecycle rebate, which we'll pay them on the back end up to 20% for the software and services they sell. So profitability is a really big part of the managed services arena. And we're continuing to find different ways to kind of drive that for them as we continue to work with them and get feedback.
What type of certifications do you offer?
We have a number of different certifications. Actually, we just recently revamped our partner program to make it much more flexible to how partners are set up. Our base certification is our IT solution provider certification, and that really looks at the full Schneider portfolio of solutions that are focused on the edge. So that's our UPSs, our PDUs, our racks. Software and services is a subset of that, but that's really to help them really understand what our value prop is and how it would fit into the solutions they're providing outside of Schneider to their customers. A subset of that is our IT software certification, which is a newer one that's being launched. That's actually where our software digital services fit. And that's a certification specific to what we're talking about that actually will help them understand how to incorporate our software and services into their business. And then the last one we have is around the data center. So we have partners that play in the data center today. They can take that certification and actually get the expertise around that. So they can pick and choose the ones that make the most sense, but those are what are available today.
Larry, finally, where can we learn more information?
There's a number of different spots you can go to. The first is we actually have a managed services hub. So basically, this is a resource that will walk you through all the different things that you might need to know in regards to becoming a managed service provider around power. And actually, it starts with a quiz that has the partner kind of answer questions in regards to what they're monitoring and the service footprint looks like, and actually makes a recommendation as to which solution they should implement. We also have our ecostructureIT.com website, which really gets into this more specific around our cloud-based monitoring software and the services that wrap around that. And then there's just our partner program itself. That website will give you all the details on the different partner programs I just mentioned. And then also as a subset of that, we have a digital partner journey specific to managed services that they can participate in, which will walk them through the process to implement a solution and bring it to market.
Larry, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And thank you at home for watching. For the Channel Company, I'm Kenna Johnson.